Algebra 1, Section 2.8, we're dealing with dividing numbers. Now, when you're dividing numbers, basically you're multiplying by the inverse. So when you were doing the vocabulary in sections past, the inverse means basically the reverse fraction, okay? So for example, if I have A divided by B, I'm multiplying it basically with A times the inverse, which is since B, okay, B is a whole number, the fraction would be B over 1. So the inverse would be 1 over B. Okay, so that means the inverse of the whole number is 1 on top. So it'd be A times 1B. So for example, if I have negative 1 divided by 3, what I'm saying is negative 1 times the inverse of 3, which is 1/3. So negative 1 times 1/3 gives me a negative 1/3. That's an example. So let's try this one. What this is telling us is I have negative 45 divided by 5/6. So it's telling me to multiply by the inverse. So negative 45 times, so instead, because it's not a whole number, what I'm going to do for the inverse is I'm just going to flip it. So instead of 5/6, I'm going to multiply by 6 over 5. Okay, this allows me to then just multiply like we've been doing in the past. I take the whole number and I multiply it by the top. So negative 45 times 6 should be 270, I believe. Yes, 270. So this would be negative 270, right? And I'm just going to bring the denominator over. Okay, that negative, don't forget, so it's negative 270. So negative 270 divided by 5, if it's a whole number, then I need to leave it, should give me 54. So I'm going to bring that negative down, negative 54. Alright? So I multiplied the top only, and then I divided it by the bottom. That's what happens when you're multiplying fractions with a whole number. Now, the next step is trying to trick you. See, this division line is basically saying the same thing as 2 and 1/3 divided by negative 3. Okay? Here's the thing. Mixed fractions are not your friend when you're trying to solve things algebraically. So you want to make it into improper fractions or decimals. Preferably here, we're going to do improper fraction. To find an improper fraction, I'm basically going to multiply it by the top, so multiply, and then add it to the, multiply by the bottom and add it to the top. So that means 2 times 3 is 6, okay, so this equals 6, and I'm going to add it to 1, which is 7. So 7 over 3 divided by negative 3. Now, I have to change that division sign. So what this is saying is 7 over 3, right? Instead of division times, but I have to put the inverse of 1/3, which is negative 1, the inverse of negative 3, which is negative 1/3. Right? So from here, because both of them are fractions, unlike this one where I just multiply the top, since both of them are fractions, I'm just going to multiply across, if you remember the rules of multiplying fractions. So 7 times negative 1 is negative 7, and 3 times 3 is 9. So keep that in mind. When I have a whole number, I multiply by top and then I divide it by the bottom. But because I have two fractions, I multiply across. I keep nothing the same. So then I end up with negative 7 over 9. Now because this will give me a decimal or an improper or a mixed fraction, I'm just going to leave it as negative 7 over 9. Right? The next thing that we're going to do is they want us to simplify. Now it gets pretty tricky when you have a negative, when you have it split with a negative or plus. What this is telling me is that this denominator belongs to both the 9 and the 27. When it's split between, when there's a negative or an addition on the top fraction. So what this is showing me is, marker's no longer working. This is the same thing as saying 9 over 3 minus 27x over 3. Okay? When I do that, then I can do 9 over 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3, whole number 3, and minus 27 divided by 3, which would give me a negative 9, and don't forget that x, 9x. Now because this has no variable and this has a variable, I can't reduce it anymore, so this is going to be my answer. Alright, so go ahead and try page 116, number 8 and 9, page 116, number 8 and 9, and that's your last section.